Welcome, and thank you for joining us. I'm Doug Nadvornik. KSPS is pleased to bring you this debate featuring the candidates running for the House of Representatives in Washington State's 6th District Position 2. The winner in this race will serve 2 years. This is an open seat. There's no incumbent. Representative Jeff Holy has held the seat but decided to run for the Washington State Senate. So let's take a look at the 6th District. It's crescent-shaped around the northwest and southern parts of Spokane, with parts of north and southwestern Spokane County included. The district includes Airway Heights, Medical Lake, and Cheney. The candidates in the race are Jenny Graham and Dave Wilson, and welcome to you both. For this debate, the candidates will answer questions from a panel of Spokane journalists. From the Inlander, Daniel Walters. From the Spokesman Review, Kip Hill. And from KXLY News 4, Derek Deis. Before we begin, I want to go over a few of the debate rules for our viewers. All of these rules were agreed to by the candidates prior to the debate. The reporter panel will ask the same question to both candidates, or a panel member may direct a question just to one candidate. Reporter panel members may request a follow-up to an answer. The answers will be limited to 1 minute. The candidates will be allowed 2 rebuttals for the entire debate, and those rebuttals will be limited to 30 seconds each. So a coin flip determined that Jenny Graham will have the opportunity to answer the first question first, and we will go to Kip Hill with the first question.
So yesterday, at the time of this taping, the Washington State Supreme Court just once again overturned the death penalty here in Washington State. Do you believe that was the correct decision for the court to make?
My sister was a victim of the Green River murder case, and I definitely support the death penalty, and I will tell you 49 reasons why. These are 49 reasons these people no longer have a voice. Wendy Lee Caulfield, Giselle Ann Lavorne, Deborah Lynn Bonner, Marcia Faye Chapman, Cynthia Jean Hines, Opal Charmaine Mills, Terry Renee Milligan, Mary Meehan Bridget, Deborah Lorraine Estes, Linda Jane Rule, Denise Darcel Bush, Shawanda Lee Summers, Shirley Marie Sherrill, Becky Marrero, Colleen Renee Brockman, Sandra Denise Major, Alma Ann Smith, Dolores Laverne Williams, Andrea M. Childers, Sandra K. Gabbert, Marie Malavar. That's only a quarter of the way through the names of the murder victims. We need somebody strong in Olympia to fight for victims and their families.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
So this is a tough question. I'm somewhat conflicted on it because on the one hand, I'm concerned because too many innocent people have been convicted and put to death. However, there are some crimes that are so horrible that I believe they do warrant the death penalty. Crimes like terrorism, the murder of a first responder, serial killers, or really horrible murders. The death penalty is also an important tool for prosecutors because it allows them to bargain with murderers to get cooperation. I think that's a legitimate argument to keep the death penalty. However, I think we also have to be careful and have a careful discussion of this in the legislature because the reasons that this was overturned, I believe, are valid. It's disproportionate on people of color. So I would like to see it kept for those circumstances that I mentioned, but this should be a rare thing, and it should be only in those circumstances.
Thank you. Yes.
The facts of the matter are that I am an expert in this case, and there are more white people on death row in Washington State right now than colored people. That's a fact. And the bottom line is this. We victims asked for this to go to a vote of the people. The court doing it this way sidestepped the people's voice. We need, as victims, family members to be heard, and there are plenty of people that I know that want to vote on this issue.
Thank you. Daniel Walters, you have the next question.
For years, the Washington State Legislature has maintained that their records can be kept secret in a way that the records of a city council or a county commission cannot be. Last year, that was put to the test with Jeff Holey and many other legislators voting to continue to keep many of the records that a city council would be forced to release secret. My question is, to what degree should records of the state legislature be able to be obtained by the public?
Mr. Wilson, you get first.
My belief is the more transparency, the better. I think the people were heard loud and clear when that legislation was passed. The governor got so much blowback on it that he vetoed the bill. And so I would not be in favor of any kind of limitation like that, and I would like to see full transparency.
Ms. Graham?
I support transparency with public records. The people have a right to know, to a certain point, what's in those records. They redact sensitive information, obviously to protect maybe witnesses in a case. And the other thing that we need to also take care in is that there's a certain set of rules right now where there's an expectation of privacy. So I don't feel that it would be fair to just in the middle of everything change the rules. So it shouldn't be retroactive.
Okay. Next question, Derek Deis for Ms. Graham.
We know you both stated that you're in favor of supporting education and responsible taxes. So we're wondering, what kind of taxation laws would you champion or look to change in Washington State?
Taxation laws, I wouldn't champion any tax laws at this point. Washington State does not have a tax deficit problem. We have a spending and accountability problem. So the things that I'm going to look to champion are going to be to start advocating for some accountability with the funds that we're already receiving. Are those monies being spent in a responsible way, and how are they being allocated?
Mr. Wilson?
Well, first of all, there's no need, absolutely no need for any new taxes or I believe any changes to the tax system at this time. We have more than enough revenues. Increasing taxes is always a poor first choice when looking for additional or new revenue. The best thing we can do is sustain a strong business environment so that we have strong taxes coming in from the strong economy. Now, there's always a natural tension between rising tax revenues and the demand for more government services. I think it's imperative that as state lawmakers that we do our best to safeguard and make wise use of tax dollars. Over time, you know, I would like to see the tax system reformed so that sales taxes weren't so high, but this will have to be a bipartisan measure. It cannot be a partisan measure, so at this time I wouldn't advocate for any changes unless it was on a bipartisan basis.
Okay. Next question is for Dave Wilson, and it's from Kip Hill.
Let me get specific on taxation, because this is something that came up again this week as it relates to education. Hearing from both of you, we have surpluses and we're in good financial shape, but the Office of the Superintendent for Public Instruction actually threw out this idea of a capital gains tax to help bolster education funding, which would take some of the pressure off of property taxes, which a lot of people argue that the Washington State taxation system is very regressive because it doesn't have an income tax. So my question specifically is, do you believe that that is a way to, that 8% capital gains tax is a good thing to do to bolster education funding in the state?
Well, I would not be for that without a vote of the people. And so I am concerned about our regressive tax system. But again, without a bipartisan effort to reform our tax system, there's no sense in even starting on it. It would not work, and it would not be well received, and it would, I think, cause virtually a civil war in the state legislature. So it's a good theory. It's something that if we can get some kind of incremental change in a bipartisan fashion, again, I would be very open to having those discussions, but not without that.
Ms. Graham?
Well, first of all, the capital gains tax, all of the doors that I've been going to, the people, the voters are not supporting the capital gains tax. We're on track to be in the highest tax state in the nation already, and the reason we don't have the capital gains tax is because we already pay excise taxes on our house, the houses that we buy, and we also have a pretty steep sales tax. So the idea of tax, it's just too much. It's breaking the backs of the working people, and we need to look for ways to do a better job spending the money that we're already getting.
Mr. Wilson, you wanted to rebut?
I do. I've heard my opponents say this several times, but I want to clarify. Washington State is not on track to be the highest tax state in the nation. Now, you can Google this, and depending on what you find on Google, you're going to find that Washington State is somewhere between 26th and 35th. So we're not even in the top half. Now, nobody likes taxes, but again, what's important is wise use of tax dollars. But for her to keep saying that we're on track to have the highest taxes, that is simply not true.
Okay. Next question from Ms. Graham. Daniel Walters. Did you want to rebut?
Yes, I do. I want to rebut. I'm not going to get into an arguing match back and forth, but the bottom line is we are the second highest for gas taxes, and there are definite concerns when you speak to the people, the average person out in the street, the average person that owns a business that is struggling right now with the crushing taxes that we have. We are not the highest yet. I didn't say that. What I did say is that if we keep going in the direction that we are going, especially with the taxes that are proposed in the future, we are on track to becoming the highest tax state in the nation. And there's people that want a stop put to that.
Okay. Next question for Ms. Graham is from Daniel Walters.
Yeah, back in a few months ago, the Spokane GOP made national news when it turned out that the Spokane GOP chair, Cecily Wright, hosted a white supremacist James Alsup at an event. She ended up resigning in the midst of that. Cecily Wright was your treasurer. I'm wondering how you reacted to that controversy and how you handled it.
Well, first of all, I was heartbroken, to hear what happened. I don't support white supremacy or any supremacy, anybody feeling they're better than somebody else. I was not involved with any of that. As a new candidate running for office, I was referred to Cecily that she'd worked in a bank before, that she's somebody that was knowledgeable about filing PDC paperwork. So that was the relationship that we had. She filed my PDC paperwork. That was the extent of it. When that all happened, I wasn't involved, and it was very sad to see that happen. I don't support it, and I did end up getting another treasurer. There was nothing I could do. It wasn't my fault.
Okay. Mr. Wilson?
Well, this is disconcerting to me. I think you heard her mention earlier about her comments on the death penalty. And one other thing that I want to point out, and you can look this up on the Spokesman Review site, on August 18th, my opponent took part in a march in the park that had to do with, it was called Liberty or Death. And part of the people who attended that rally were known to be white nationalists. And so it's very disconcerting to me. I see a pattern here that I think needs to be called into question.
Who specifically are you referring to who attended that rally, who were white nationalists?
There was a group called the Patriot Prayer Group, who are considered to be alt-right or national white nationalists.
They don't consider themselves to be white nationalists.
Well, I would imagine they wouldn't.
All right, next question is for Mr. Wilson from Derek Deis.
Yeah, another candidate-specific one here. Mr. Wilson, you had previously run as an independent. You're now running as a Democrat. So why the change, and do your ideals truly align with the ideals of the Democratic Party?
Well, I think they do. So why the change? Well, First of all, I ran as an independent because I didn't think at that time that a Democrat could defeat Representative Kathy McMorris Rodgers. Now, I don't feel that way with Lisa Brown. I think she's got a real chance to win, and she's a very strong candidate. What I learned from that experience is you have to run under one of the two major parties. And I could not align myself with the Republicans, and that started back, so the last 15 years I've been voting primarily Democratic. So it started with the Iraq War, which I felt was a debacle that we're still suffering from. The coming of the Tea Party, which I felt was corrosive to our political system. And then I was not in favor of the election of President Trump. So for those reasons, I've been voting Democratic primarily the last 15 years, and that's why I've aligned with their party.
Okay. Ms. Graham.
Your thoughts on your opponent going from independent to Democrat?
That's his choice. What I'm going to take my time to talk about is what he talked about with the Liberty or Death rally. That was something that I was invited to speak at. I attended 3 public events that day, all 3. Unity in the community. That was the march that I did. There was no march in this Death, Liberty, or Death rally. And if you go back and you review the information, I talked about public safety, because public safety is something that affects all of us. I told a personal story that was real, and when I was done, I left. I wasn't involved with anybody else that was there. And I left to go to the Airway Heights days that they had there and talked with veterans and talked with firefighters, talked about some of the issues that they dealt with. And I met some very delightful families there, having a great day and enjoying each other.
Okay, next question is for Ms. Graham from Kip Hill.
Yes, I wanted to ask about one of the initiatives that's on the ballot. This is there's several, but this is the one I think that a lot of people are talking about. It has to do with the age of sales of semi-automatic weapons. 1639 is what I'm talking about. It also creates enhanced background checks for the purchase of weapons. Do you support that initiative?
I do not support the initiative. I support there being background checks. Mental health issues are very important to me. 1639 is bad policy. Sheriff Ozzie does not support it, and neither do any of the other law enforcement agencies that I'm aware of. It's an affront to our Second Amendment and law-abiding citizens. And the other issue is that it's unenforceable. And there are major privacy concerns attached to this initiative.
Okay, Mr. Wilson?
Well, I'm supporting this initiative. I believe we need some common sense measures, and I believe this is a reasonable measure. I think that this initiative will help keep schools safer for 2 primary reasons. One is the increase in the age from 18 to 21 in purchasing assault-style rifles, and the other is the safe storage provision. You know, most school shootings are done by young people under the age of 21, and most school shootings are done by young people who have gotten either their guns from their family or friends or extended family without permission. So I think that those 2 things will help keep schools safer. I agree that people have the right to own guns under the Second Amendment, but with reasonable and proper restrictions like we have for driver's licenses and product safety laws. So to me, this is not a self-defense issue. This is one small step in safer schools solutions.
Okay, next question for Mr. Wilson from Daniel Walters.
For several years, Attorney General Bob Ferguson has championed the notion of raising the age to purchase cigarettes to 21. The legislature hasn't gone through with it, partly because there is concern about losing the cigarette tax revenue if fewer people smoked. Do you agree? Do you believe the cigarette purchasing age should be raised to 21?
You know, it's not an issue I've given a lot of thought to, so I really don't have an answer for you. I guess I'd like to see cigarettes, done away with completely, but at this stage, that's probably not realistic, so I don't have an opinion on this.
Okay, Ms. Graham?
Thank you. We can't ban everything that somebody doesn't like. And if our young people, I was 19 when I entered into the Army Reserves, and if I'm old enough at that point to go to sign my name on the dotted line to fight for my country and to fight for everybody's rights, I'm sure old enough to decide whether if I want to smoke, or if I am trained in weapons, that I should be able to, as my rights, own those weapons. And putting a ban, this initiative is not going to stop people from going over the border to buy weapons other places. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a situation where mental health is going to suffer because people are going to be afraid of going to their doctor if they have certain issues. And it's going to open up our medical records to who knows who is going to decide whether you are fit to be a gun owner or not.
Ms. Graham gets the next question from Derek Deis.
Yeah, we're going to continue talking about initiatives having to do with taxes, and 1634, of course, is the grocery tax. And you both have said you would support 1634, which would ban local governments from taxing soda and other groceries. But the question then is, should local governments be prevented from taxes like this?
My question
your
first.
question, yep.
Yes. Yes, I do not support taxing groceries. It's not fair for the poorer families. It's not fair for the elderly that are living on fixed incomes. Groceries should be off limits with taxes, period.
Mr. Wilson?
Well, I would concur with that, and at this stage, I would say no, cities should not have the ability to put taxes in place.
Okay, we're down to our last question. We're going to do it 30 seconds, answer per candidate. Kip Hill for Mr. Wilson first.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what do you think the biggest mistake the legislature's made in the past few years?
Well, the one that pops to mind right off the bat is the transparency thing that just took place last session. I think that obviously blew up and backfired on them. If you gave me a couple more minutes, I might come up with something, but in 30 seconds, that's the best I can do.
Okay, Ms. Graham.
I've been to the legislature. I've worked with legislators from both parties, and I will tell you definitively where the biggest problem is the divide that we have. It's what I'm hearing when I'm talking to people that they want. We legislators, they want the legislators that they elect to go and represent them to work together, to find a way to make it happen. I've been there, and I've worked with both sides on important issue to find a solution, and that's what our voters are looking for.
Okay, we have time to sneak in one more 30-second question, so apologies for that. For Ms. Graham, Daniel Walters, you're first.
Yeah, where do you find that you disagree with your party the most?
I can't say that it's that I disagree with my party. There are people in either party that act in a way or say things or do things that I don't necessarily agree with. So I don't think that it comes down to a party issue. I align with the platform of my party. And I'm also somebody, though, that is reasonable when it comes to working with other people. I'm not judgmental. It's not my position to judge.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, you get the last one here.
Well, I would like to tell you I align perfectly with my party, but of course I don't. And it goes back to the question you asked me about why I chose the Democratic Party. Look, I do align with almost all of their values. Here's the significant difference. I believe Americans are incrementalists and that we like to see change happen slowly and over time. And a lot of my very passionate members of my party want to see the ball move down the field much more quickly. So they want to throw more Hail Marys, and I'd rather move the ball down the field 3 yards at a time. So that's probably the biggest difference.
Okay, thank you for that. That will be our last question, and it's time now for closing statements. Before the debate, we flipped a coin, and Jenny Graham gets the first closing statement.
Against all odds, here I am, Jenny Graham, asking you, the voters of the 6th District, to choose me as your next state representative. As a caring citizen and mother, I successfully advocated for law reform in Olympia, protecting our children and making our neighborhoods safer. Recognizing need and taking on a life of service was never about me. It has always been about protecting my community, and nothing's changed. Folks, I'm the same person that I was, and I'm asking for your trust and your partnership now. I have proven experience working with legislators in both parties on emotional and difficult legislation. It took thinking outside the box to draw everybody together and to put our children in front of politics, because that's as it should be. A vote for Jenny Graham is a vote for common sense and a strong voice for you in Olympia.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, your closing statement.
I've lived in Spokane for over 35 years. My wife and I raised all 6 of our kids here. I started and ran Interface Computer School for over 30 years. I've devoted my life to education because I've seen how it transforms lives. Education creates opportunities. For 30 years, I saw my students at Interface Computer School learn the skills they need to be successful and to get better jobs. We need to be focused on the future and be prepared for opportunities that are coming to the state, our region, and our district. I will work with my colleagues in Olympia on both sides of the aisle to build on what has been accomplished the last few sessions, benefiting education at all levels. I'm honored to have the support of so many people across the district who agree with me that education is fundamental to a strong economy and a strong democracy. I'm Dave Wilson. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you to you both. And that will do it for this debate. Our thanks to the candidates, Jenny Graham and Dave Wilson. Our thanks to our journalists, Daniel Walters, Kip Hill, and Derek Deis. KSPS has a complete lineup of debates this election season. Check out the rest of our coverage at ksps.org. Look for the Election 2018 icon. For all of us at KSPS, thank you for watching.